Welcome to SARC Talk. SARC is a nonprofit cancer research organization that develops and manages clinical research trials in pediatric and adult sarcomas. SARC Talk is a podcast to discuss activities of SARC, interview sarcoma research leaders, and review scientific initiatives in the sarcoma field.
Welcome to SARC Talk, episode 21. My name is Scott Okuno, a medical oncologist at Mayo Clinic and Chief Medical Officer of SARC. At SARC Talk, we interview interesting people who are connected to sarcoma, where we can share and spread the knowledge about sarcoma. All episodes are posted on our website, Spotify, and YouTube channel. So please leave comments and subscribe, and we'll get back to you as best we can. Today, our guest at SARC Talk is Dr. Aerang Kim. She's a professor of pediatrics with tenure at George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences and director of clinical research in the Division of Oncology at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. Dr. Kim is an undergrad at Northwestern University. She did her medical school at the University of Illinois at Chicago. She then went on and did her PhD at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. She then moved to New York and did her pediatric residency at NYU. And they did a combined PEDS HEMONC program at Johns Hopkins as well as NIH. So we're happy today to have Dr. Kim with us. Please welcome Dr. Kim.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Dr. Kim, it turns out that you and I have many mutual things. We both grew up in the same suburbs of Chicago, which is quite interesting. We both went to the same University of Illinois Chicago Medical School. And our paths have crossed quite a bit here at SARC. So maybe you can share with our group your journey from undergrad to your present situation, because the journey is a little different for you because of your time at NCI and your program PED. So maybe you can share.
Sure. So, as you had mentioned, I went to college at Northwestern, which is, in my home state of Illinois. And even before that, I was, when I was cleaning out my parents' house one time, I found your high school superlatives, and it said, I want to be a pediatric oncologist. I don't even think I even knew what a pediatric oncologist was at that time, but I knew I always wanted to do medicine. And at Northwestern, I studied biology and psychology, and then went on to University of Illinois at Chicago. And there, I really, I think that's where I really knew I wanted to do peds, and I really wanted to do oncology. But went on to do my residency at NYU, and then my fellowship at the NCI Hopkins program, which really was a wonderful program, both clinically and as well as in research. Really introduced me to the field of oncology, and the interest in sarcoma as well as clinical trials. It really gave opportunities for understanding and learning the biology of sarcomas, taking care of patients with this disease in both pediatric and young adults, as well as learning about the translation in the science of clinical trials. And so, and from there, I just went across the Beltway to Children's National, where I've been here for the last 14 years, and lucky to continue to work in this field.
What's interesting is that you haven't looked back to the Midwest since you left. Okay. The East Coast is a beautiful place, and as you know, you've hit some major medical centers there, and some of us had the opportunity to visit NCI, but you remember it's kind of a different type of thing. So maybe for our audience, can you share a little bit what are the unique features that you learned and continue to value of your time and spending at NCI?
Yeah. I think at the time I was just fortunate enough to work at the combined Hopkins NCI program. And when I was doing my research years, as part of my fellowship, I opted to work in the pediatric oncology branch at the time, which was under the leadership of Lee Hellman. And so there was just many biology trials, investigations undergoing in sarcoma. So I was just exposed to seeing patients with sarcomas that are enrolling in clinical trials. And because the unique opportunity at the NCI, where we have, it's almost a national referral base where patients can come in from all over the country, and this wonderful center for the Clinical Research Center where we're able to run clinical trials um, of interest. And I was fortunate enough also to, join the pharmacology and experimental therapeutics section of the pediatric oncology branch, which at the time was under the leadership of Frank Bayless and Brigitte Wiedemann, who, they were both wonderful mentors, really taught me, what a clinical trial was, what pharmacology was, what pharmacokinetics was, really, understanding the translation in early phase studies and with this population of patients. And it really exposed me to the world of neurofibromatosis as well. So in that way, I think it really shaped my career. And it's really a place that's unique and still, I still have, because I'm fortunate enough to still live so close to the NIH, still have a lot of still have the opportunities to go there and still connect with all the folks that were and are there. So it's really nice.
You had some great people, and they're still there. Lee and Brigitte are still there. We know from the work that we've done at SARC as well. For those that might not know, when patients do go to NCI, there's something unique there about patients that come there and what they get. Maybe you can share it just so people understand when you do enroll in a trial and get treatment at NCI, what is the cost for the patient?
So because they utilize the our tax dollars and our the research funding that is intramural with the NCI, the Clinical Research Center is a wonderful place where patients can enroll in clinical trials that are open, and then the costs for many of their tests and treatments at that time, if they're being done at the NIH Clinical Center, are done at no cost to the patient. Obviously, that is, a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful way, for our patients to receive clinical trials, as well as, opportunities for the families, especially in the pediatric patients to, there's a beautiful place where patients can stay while they're enrolling on clinical trials, and everything is right there, which is really just, which really makes, running clinical trials easy, and may not always represent the real world, but it is an ideal place when we have innovative trials that we can run to be run in the Clinical Research Center.
And I think that's one of the highlights that sometimes we have to stop and reflect that, the government and the group at NCI and NIH really do support clinical trials, innovative trials, and really make it as best as possible to decrease the financial burden of the patient. Clearly it's removing them from their normal surroundings, coming to a very warm and comforting place, but it's still not home. But you guys do a great job, and it's a great place. So I just wanted people to understand that, yeah, it, you kind of said it's not real world, but it is real world. They're trying to find real things there, but you're right, it's a real thing because a lot of us in other areas struggle because of financial toxicities of what we do and the impact on patients. So we understand. So this is good. You are also now the director of clinical research at Children's National Hospital. Can you share some of the success and opportunities there as a pediatric oncologist? Remember, it's not a sarcoma person per se, but you are a sarcoma person too, but it's broader than that. And maybe share how you approach the world a little differently now, knowing that you're kind of responsible for a broader, um, program.
Yeah, so my interest in clinical trials is, especially in pediatric oncology, is to advance pediatric treatments and outcomes. So in that way, I'm fortunate to be involved in directing early phase clinical trials, and in general solid tumors, but others as well. And I think that just reflects the pediatric oncology community, which I actually think is very similar to the sarcoma community because we are rare tumors, and in order for rare tumors to advance, I feel like we have to work in a community. We have to cooperate with each other. And so in peds oncology, we cooperate with other pediatric oncologists, with other hospitals. We cooperate with each other in consortia. And I think sarcomas are very similar in that way, and SARC in itself. And the patients and their families and their advocates, we work with them as well. And they drive a lot of our research in terms of, how do we want to improve their outcome? And, to me, I think that's where it all stems from, is trying to improve the lives of our patients. And so when we think about our clinical trials to improve them, I feel like our patients, they trust us to enroll in these studies. And, a lot of times they may not have good outcome for their patients because of the state of their refractory disease. But they do so because of the hope, but also really in the altruism that in the long term, they want to improve the outcomes for all patients with cancer. And so in that way, I feel like this pediatric oncology community, sarcoma community, is really geared towards that. And that's, I think where all the stem of in terms of our clinical trials in oncology. And that's, I think, what drives, all the folks that we work with here too, our clinical research team. That's our mission. And so even though we're, peds oncology is a small component of oncology, that's our mission, is to improve the outcomes. And I think we all work towards that same mission, which makes it really nice in terms of a cooperative and community setting.
You said some words there that I think we just want to make sure that I understand correctly. And you did say that when patients do enroll in clinical trials, we're trying to provide the best care for the individual with novel therapies, new drugs, and hopefully the patients will benefit. But you also said that these individuals do understand that their enrolling in a clinical trial might not impact them, but might impact other people and other patients that come after them. And I think that is something, you use the word altruistic, and it is important. Yeah, they'll hopefully benefit, but also we don't get better by doing unless we get more and more collaboration. And you've kind of highlighted that's really the mission of what you do at your institution.
Yep, and it's remarkable. I feel like, when it comes down to it, that's what we all want to do, is make, our patients' lives better and improve the outcomes for these diseases. And so, I just really think of the community as what makes it so special.
Yeah. You highlighted, or you did say that you've done trials at SARC, and I know you've done several trials with SARC through a very specific network, and that is, basically using SARC, developing the trial, using funding from the DoD, Department of Defense, to run certain clinical trials through SARC. And maybe you can share with our group kind of how that came about and kind of what your thoughts are as we look forward to more studies in this vein as well.
Yeah, so I've again had the opportunity, and I think again it started with my mentor, Brigitte Wiedemann, who had one of the first DoD awarded studies through SARC, which kind of acknowledged me to this mechanism of funding and opportunity. So the Department of Defense NF Research Initiative, the NFRI, is federally like congressional funding that allows for funding for the work in NF, in neurofibromatosis. And we know that NF is a disease with a genetic syndrome that causes multiple sequelae, one of them being tumors and cancers. We consider NF to be a tumor predisposition syndrome. And one of the tumors that may be caused are benign and peripheral nerve sheath tumors, and one of them being malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumors, which we know are aggressive tumors with poor outcome. And so really an unmet need. And so they have a mechanism called Clinical Trial Award, where they will fund NF-associated clinical trials, specifically geared towards clinical trials. And utilizing the SARC network and the SARC system, we've been able to successfully submit grants using the DoD clinical trial award mechanisms and the NFRI research, with SARC being able to lead the way in terms of coordination of the studies. And so I've really had a wonderful opportunity to work with SARC, being the principal investigator and the submitting these grants with SARC. And it's always been fun each time we've done it. And it's really been a great opportunity to meet with the SARC community, the SARC operations team, which is like yourself, and the SARC operations teams, which are wonderful, and really learning about trial coordination through SARC. And so it's been a great opportunity for multiple studies. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry. It's been a really wonderful opportunity to collaborate in multiple studies, and I do hope that we have future studies together. But it's been allowed us. I think we've had 3 successful collaborations with the DoD NFRI funding and SARC.
Yeah. We really enjoyed working with your group. You and the team come up with some great designs. We help facilitate and allow things to happen. And as you know, you've run 3 very successful multi institutional studies very effectively. So we look forward to the next one. I know you guys are working hard at thinking about the next options there. There are many types of sarcomas that you could focus on, and you've seemed to have kind of focused somewhat in part recently, or in MPNST or malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor. How did you get involved, or how did that interest evolve? Because there are other sarcomas that one could do as well.
Yeah. So again, this all really stemmed from I think the opportunities that arise, and when I was a fellow at the NCI, I actually worked on my first clinical trial was a trial of sorafenib in NF1 and plexiform neurofibromas, and at the time, I was a little worried actually because I was just started my second year of pediatric oncology fellowship, and I said, oh, this is a benign tumor. I mean, am I going to only work in the NF space? Am I only going to be working in benign tumors? And at that time, Frank and Brigitte was like, no, you're going to learn how to run a clinical trial. You're going to learn about novel mechanisms of drug, and you're going to learn what a phase 1 trial is, what the PK means. And so I said, okay, of course, I'm going to follow what you're going to tell me to do. And so, and that work really has led me in learning about NF, learning about the mechanisms of the tumors and behind the biology in NF, which ultimately, these patients, even though MPNST can occur in patients that do not have NF, half of them have NF. And in patients with NF, they may arise from these benign plexiform neurofibromas and transform into these malignant tumors. And we know that the outcomes are awful in patients with MPNST. And we know that this is an unmet need, that we don't have effective medical therapies, but we're learning so much about the biology of these diseases, and that there may be treatments with the implosion of targeted therapies that are available, the understanding and the pathogenesis of MPNSTs, that there may be therapies, and our hopes to apply these therapies that we see in preclinical models into the clinical realm. And again, through the work and my mentors at the time at the NCI and meeting with collaborators that do the preclinical science, really gave me the opportunity to translate this as a trialist into patients. And so I think that's how I was introduced to the world, and really has been a wonderful opportunity to meet patients and to treat this disease.
It's interesting. It's who the mentors are and how your life and career would change. And just for myself too, is that when I came on staff, my mentor was Dr. Edmondson, John Edmondson, and he was a sarcoma doctor. Well, who would think 25, 30 years later, this is what I'd be doing? So it's very interesting. You, you did highlight a couple times that you've had some great mentors along the way, and which is great, and you've learned a lot. But now the shoe is on the other hand, because now you are a mentor to many young investigators. And how are you approaching, um, young investigators now, just like you were told, you're going to learn clinical trials, you're going to learn PKs, okay? Yeah, you can figure all the rest later on, but how do you approach it now?
So I think I approach in a similar way that I've been taught. That we have, folks that are interested in doing translational studies into clinical trials and really learning and really, teaching them about the trials and tribulations of writing a clinical trials, developing a trials, and it takes a village and it takes time and it takes patience. But to pass on that knowledge and to grant opportunities. So one of the I think the opportunities that great mentors for me have done is really introduce me and allow me to take on responsibilities, introduce me to the community, allow me to partake in committees and partake in opportunities like at SARC and others such as that, support me, meet with me on a regular basis, be open in there and really promote my work. And that's what I want to do for my mentees is allow them to shine, allow them to promote their work, and really learn about doing clinical trial development in an appropriate way, exposing them to the right folks to translate and work with, and um, engaging in consortia, our pharma collaborators, all the folks that we need in order to effectively run clinical trials.
To highlight what you're sharing is it, and you said it takes a village. So it's not just coming up with an idea. You got to have the infrastructure. You got to figure out the science behind why you're doing it. You got to have good collaborative partners in pharma because they have ideas too, and they have drugs that they would do. You said the word consortia a couple times, and the consortia for NF is quite robust. The neurofibroma group. Can you share with the group kind of what is the NF consortium and what are their plans and goals? Because that will kind of give some patients an idea of kind of where the next 5 years in sarcoma for MPNST and NF are going.
Yeah. So I'm also part of the Department of Defense NF Clinical Trials Consortium. I lead the MPNST Disease Committee within that consortium. But the consortium is not only for MPNSTs, they're for all the kind of sequelae that we see in patients with NF, including NF1, 2, and schwannomatosis. And so we have disease committees for all of the kind of sequelae that we may see. And for MPNST, we work with our preclinical collaborators and our clinical trials team to think about, again, ideas to translate into clinical trials for patients with NF. So my hopes is that we can continue to work, with other consortia together. I ideally see this where we can build upon SARC and the DoD and FCTC together, where pediatric oncologists, medical oncologists, neuro-oncologists, the folks that take care of patients with NF and the folks that take care of patients with sarcoma, because those are the real kind of expertise that you need to treat a disease like MPNST, can come together to develop the best trials so that we may have opportunities for patients with novel therapeutics for this disease for which we don't have good medical therapies.
No, I know that your group is doing a lot of great work and moving forward and knowing that it's not just treating disease, there's the psychosocial, all the other aspects that need to be studied and supported. So continue your efforts, and it's a big group, and I do let people to understand there is a larger consortium. Recently, we've had a good smattering, better, not really the best way to say it, of pediatric hematologist oncologists. And as an adult oncologist, we're always reminded that pediatrics is not just treating smaller adults. I mean, they're totally different people. They have different things going on. And I know you do a lot of work in the PEDS group, pediatric group, the collaborations. You work in the AYA space as well. And where do you see sarcoma as a whole starting to span all of this? And you kind of suggested that as well. But where do you see us going in the next 5 years? Where in your lens as a pediatric hematologist oncologist, so you can enlighten me as an adult sarcoma oncologist.
Yeah. So in a world, I really, I hope for a world of integration for peds and medical oncologists, especially for sarcomas. Like a significant portion of our sarcomas are in the adolescent and AYA population. So we're missing this whole like group of folks that are kind of in between us, like in between the peds and in between the medical oncology worlds. And I really hope that we can integrate together. And I see that in multiple like different ways. One, I feel like we have some barriers in our clinical trials where we arbitrarily set age limits, which sometimes I feel like that can be loosened. Even with some FDA guidance, we can lower our age limits to allow more adolescents to enroll in clinical trials. I think that we can work in multiple consortia. I know we've done this through several other trials where several consortia, both pediatric and adult consortia, can work together to open up clinical trials together. So we have a wide range, a network of patients that can enroll. I think there has to be roles for expansion cohorts as well as uh, allowing for simultaneous enrollment of pediatric patients. So I think, smart design can help in terms of integrating our studies together. And some of these things can be agnostic. There can be, like, for instance, I love the track story. So the track fusion story where they were able to integrate the PEDS portion of the study early on, develop PEDS formulation, and really develop a approval for an agnostic manner for that included both children and adults. And so I think sarcomas, because of the uniqueness of this and the age population, is where it can be done, where we can integrate. And I feel again, one thing about SARC that I really enjoy is that there are pediatric oncologists, there are medical oncologists, there are radiation oncologists, there are surgeons, and we can all work together, because that's what we need, is a multidisciplinary group to treat these rare diseases.
Yeah, earlier on, when this was all developed, there was a big, and there still is a component of emphasis on peds. In fact, in our steering groups, et cetera, we have peds in our group. And we tried, and with the help of you as well, we try to lower as low as we can go on these trials without getting too much pushback from regulatory and industry partners. But it is right. These diseases, although the biology might be a little different in older and young, I think we can learn and leverage a lot. And with the agnostic NTRK disease, as that's just like you said, spot on in that. So, and we learned a lot with the non-mutated GIST as well. Because we were always in the realm running with a mutated gastrointestinal stromal tumors. Well, you guys said stop. There are these PEDS group that does have, and then the NF group as well, unusual just that are not mutated or to the way we typically think. So I think SARC, you said, is very uh, collaborative, and I think the sarcoma community, as you said, is there. As we start to think about, not that we're old, we're thinking about ourselves, but um, you've had some time to reflect your time at Northwestern, University of Illinois, Johns Hopkins, NCI, and where you are now. What would you say to your younger self as you were an undergrad, medical school, residency, HEMONC program? What would you say to yourself?
Well, one, I would tell myself to take Spanish. So a regret I
All
have.
the things Spanish. Okay, there you go.
And I think, I feel fortunate. I think that, I would just tell myself to keep your eyes open and opportunities open, work with people, learn from people, and yeah, take Spanish. I took a lot of French. Not that I don't love French, but I don't remember a lot of French, and I really would appreciate it if I could have taken Spanish. But no, to be real, I think I've had a very fortunate time, and I don't think I realized some of it when, you don't realize it when you're going through it. But to appreciate the things that, and to be patient. I mean, I could write a book on all the failed clinical trials that have happened in my life and what it didn't go through because of X and X. And so I think, just sometimes you have to let those frustrations go and be patient because, that's all you can do.
Well,
Yeah.
you found out 50 to 100 different ways not to do a clinical trial.
That's
So the
true.
next one you'll know is what to do when you
Yeah.
do a clinical trial.
Yeah.
So as we end here, I know that you are tightly involved also with the community patient advocacy groups as well. Are there any additional insight that you might have working with your groups and the patient advocacy groups as a peds hemonc, especially out in the East Coast there where you are?
Yeah. So one of the really great experiences that I had when I was developing one trial was working with the patient advocacy group before the trial had been completed, and to get their ideas and thoughts and some of the study design questions that were incorporated and whether they would be willing to participate in some of these designs. And so it actually gave a lot of great feedback from this patient advocacy group in terms of the clinical trial, the way we designed it, what they would be willing to come for, because some of these studies that are if there's an instrument or a device that's only available at several institutions, like our family's willing to fly out to that institution for that portion of the study. Is that something that they're willing to invest in? Are they willing to do certain tests that may require for them to stay long days on that day? And it's really interesting to hear what their thoughts are in terms of what they desire and what they think is important, and we really need to take that into consideration because they're the ones that are enrolling in our studies. And so I actually learned a lot. This was many years ago, and so I really do enjoy working with patient advocacy groups. I do enjoy with hearing what patients have to say and their families about clinical trials and the design. And I think if we can incorporate them early, that's the best way to go. Yeah.
We always wonder why our studies don't accrue or don't meet the endpoints that we want. And, maybe not necessarily always is that we didn't engage the right people up front in the design. So I like your idea, get them involved, get patient advocacy, family, patients involved early, and they will help inform what is acceptable and what is not. So that's great. So as we end here our time together, Dr. Kim, are there any additional thoughts that you might have for us at SARC or our audience?
No, I want to thank SARC. I've really enjoyed working with SARC and the operations team there. I really love this community. It's small. Like I don't think people realize that it's small, right? That and we all have small, like just the connections that we have. It's a small community. Everyone knows each other, and so I think that's really special. And I really enjoy being a part of it.
Well, we love being a part of your time and effort with us today and continued work in the sarcoma space and great initiatives that you have in Washington, D.C. and beyond. So we look forward to it. So thanks for your time, Dr. Kim.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.
Our next our talk will be coming up in the future, so I look forward to our next posting. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of SARC Talk. To find out more about SARC, please visit our website at sarctrials.org. To suggest a topic or for questions, please email us at sarctalk@sarctrials.org. The SARC Talk series is made possible due to funding from Boehringer Ingelheim. Together, we can find a cure for all forms of sarcoma.